What if an artist's book has to be irrevocably altered or damaged to be read? How do our actions affect or amplify the experience? Let's see how our reading is influenced when we tear the pages of Still by Amanda Fung, or steam heat and press the pages of Iron by Tatana Kellner. Amanda Fung is a queer Cantonese artist and designer who runs A to Z Press, a Riso studio in Southern California. Their work often incorporates graphic design, playful illustrations, and interactive elements amidst thoughtfully considered materials and formats. Fung's zine, Still, is bound at the top and bottom. Even though we can see through some layers of paper, we must rip the pages to enter and read the zine. This Chinese calligraphy paper is not physically difficult to tear, but it is mentally challenging. It has long been impressed on many of us never to write in or dog-ear a page, or otherwise damage a book. It was very hard for me to start ripping the paper, knowing that there's no going back. Do I try to keep it as intact as possible? Can I tear the pages open with minimal damage to this object? Fung intended for these reactions. Still is a delicate and yet raw book about grief. Figuring out how to move forward through the zine is representative of the difficult and repetitive thoughts and feelings that follow loss. Fung wrote the text for Still the day after their maternal grandfather passed away. It's a deeply personal response to Fung's own grief, but the persistent emptiness of a changed reality is relatable to anyone who has felt loss. The zine is bound with 2 thread colors. In China, red is considered auspicious, and black is associated with grieving and death. Like the text, these images were created within days of their grandfather's passing. The flowing line work has urgency and a sense of impermanence. Fung explained to me that how you open and read the zine could be indicative of how you grieve or even move through life. Some people might not hesitate to tear the paper, but as a sentimental person, Fung said they would try to minimally tear the pages. When our collection's founder, Cynthia, read the zine, she also wanted to minimize her impacts on it and chose to tear along the bottom, keeping the top binding intact. Fung said there's no right or wrong method, but they designed the zine to be completely torn apart. The pages are numbered, so you could revisit the loose sheets in sequence. But this leaves open the question of what to do with the pages and the sewn edges, much like deciding what to do with the physical artifacts left behind after someone dies. What is kept, and what is discarded? Are the 2 pieces of the binding as precious as the pages? Fung's gentle words and illustrations, juxtaposed with the irreversible tearing required to read it, reflect the isolation and challenges of grief and the difficulty of moving on. I know the world is not meant to be still. Even so, I wish I could still be with you. In those moments that no longer are, but were. Tatana Kellner is a visual artist who uses printmaking, photography, artist books, and installation to comment on contemporary culture. She is also a co-founder of Women's Studio Workshop in Rosendale, New York. Iron examines domestic labor and immigration. The cover has a simple graphic, the burn mark from an iron left in place. This burned area is slightly raised, like a welt. The book opens with instructions. To read the text, we have to steam iron the pages which were printed with heat-reactive chemistry. The additional instructions get us thinking about labor. If you don't want to do the work of ironing, Kellner suggests some options. You can leave the book unaltered. You can send it back to Kellner to iron for you, for an additional service charge. Or to save money, you can have a significant other or family member do the ironing for you. Right away, I appreciate Kellner's sly commentary about the value of domestic labor, typically assigned as women's work. Iron intersperses 3 layers of content. The left or verso pages present a visual history of the technology of ironing, beginning with a terracotta smoother from the Middle East in the 2nd century. Brief descriptions of how these irons were used accompany many of the images. These descriptions are helpful because some of these tools have the same basic form as electric irons I've used, but some of these make me think of early medical or torture devices. I have no experience with a goffering iron because none of my clothes have intricate ruffles or tucks. And I'm grateful that I don't have to deal with such meticulous details to take care of my clothes. The semi-translucent pages add additional information to the story of wrinkle smoothing technology. These are patents for irons and related tools from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s. Looking through them, I think of how a lot of these patents and innovations were developed to reduce or simplify work. But I also sense the fussiness of the garments and fabrics of the era, requiring special irons for milliners and hatters or to smooth expensive velvet. The semi-translucent paper looks and feels like something I might use to protect an iron from material that could melt, or to protect a delicate fabric like silk from too much heat. The white ink on these semi-translucent pages, alongside the thicker white papers, also reminds me that crisply ironed white cloth reflects purity, perfection, class, and wealth across many cultures. The recto or right pages are the areas that we must iron to reveal the text. Just like the cover has the raised welt, these pages have a very slight depression in the iron shape, as though someone has already pressed the page. As Kellner suggested, you do have the option to leave the book unironed. Reading the few words that are visible communicates some of her criticisms of the servitude of women and the exploitation and abuse of domestic workers and immigrant labor. Ironing, female, easy cleaning, migrant population, highly vulnerable, housekeepers, poorly paid. But to read the full text, we must do some ironing. It is hot and steamy work, but the text is revealed through our labor. Now we have quotes and facts about ironing, alongside statistics and other details about housekeeping and domestic service. We learn who makes up the population of domestic workers in cities like New York, overwhelmingly women immigrants of color. Kellner also impresses upon us the abuse, low wages, and unequal treatment of domestic workers. The final text is already there for the reader. No ironing necessary. I'm left wondering who is ironing their socks and why. And then, if there are people who iron their own socks, does that mean there are other people whose socks are ironed for them? I find it a little funny that people want their socks ironed, but I'm also left thinking about the statistics around domestic labor, paid and unpaid. Then I wonder who is advocating for the work of these primarily immigrant women of color. This book was inspired by Kellner's 2008 installation of the same name. An iron was attached to an automated arm, and one white dress shirt was ironed each day. The shirts revealed similar texts and images to those found in this book. The installation draws our attention to the invisibility of domestic workers. In contrast, the artist book puts us to work. We must stand over the heat and steam, holding the iron to read the text. Or, as Kellner suggested in the beginning, we must pay for or impose our work on others, recognizing that the underpaid and often exploited domestic labor usually falls on immigrant women of color. I asked Kellner if anyone hired her service to iron their copy of the edition. She said no. Still and iron challenge us to make permanent, even destructive changes just to read the text. But through tearing and ironing, our bodies inhabit these actions, heightening our sensitivity to the messages within.